right. Well, welcome everyone. This is episode 3 of Tipping the Scale podcast. I have with me Edmund Chien today. Edmund started his career in finance. Started his career in finance in 2002. He eventually made his way up to becoming a senior partner at a private equity firm with $500 million of investor equity. His personal book of business was $70 million, the top one third of which was a multifamily family office. Edmund was also a licensed stockbroker as well as a licensed insurance advisor, where he was an estate and tax planner for high net worth clients looking to establish multi-generational wealth. Being multidisciplined gave Edmund the well-rounded ability to be able to cater to ultra high net worth families and family offices. In addition to notable high net worth families, Edmund has also managed money for a $25 million lottery winner and an NCAA athlete. Today, as Edmund is retired from the finance industry and coaches real estate syndicators on client prospecting and investor relations, he is also a master public speaker. Edmund Chien, welcome to Tipping the Scale podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm in to say tipping the scale show because we don't like to stay in boxes, Edmund. And I want to start by talking about how Edmund is literally one of my favorite people to talk to and talk to and also to listen, because that's another big deal with me too. Because anytime Edmund speaks, I sit back and I listen. And I think to myself, how much would this have cost me if I had to pay Edmund to tell me this? So he's always giving free jewels, and I appreciate it. So let's just start off with how did you make your way into finance?
Yeah, that's a great story. So for me, what ended up happening is I started a career in entertainment. So I literally my bachelor's is a bachelor's of fine arts in live entertainment. So I worked in a lot of musicals, so large productions. I worked on Fosse, and I was really headed towards, or I wanted to head towards becoming a producer. And the production company that I was working for is a large Canadian theater company. It was publicly traded. In fact, I think it was the only publicly traded theater company at the time, and it went under. So just when I graduated, so I was looking for other positions or other jobs, and some of the other theater companies that looked at me, they said, "You know what, Ed? You have zero business credentials. I don't even know why we would ever hire you. You're just like an arts person, right?" And it really irked me. So I figured, you know what, I got to beef up my financial credentials. So I went to the finance industry in Canada. We call our Wall Street is called Bay Street. So I ended up going to Bay Street. To keep a long story short, I ended up getting a stockbroker's license. And my intent was really to just get some credentials for a couple of years, maybe 3 to 4 years, just so that I can go and put that on my resume and then return back and really go into the business side of live entertainment. Well, I did it for 4 years, and pretty much using a lot of my theater background, I just kind of emulated. Like, I watched Wall Street a couple times, and then I just kind of emulated Bud Fox and just played the part. And it got to the point where a year after being a cold caller on the phones, the pit boss comes over and says, "Ed," and I was like, "You're probably one of the best cold callers we've ever seen, and you don't even sound like a Toronto broker. You sound like a Manhattan, New York broker, and we'd love you to start teaching people." So that's where I started immediately teaching, and that's something I learned from the military, is to immediately teach stuff that you learned. And I just grew and ended up advancing at the firm. And 10 years later, I was a senior partner. I just could never get back into entertainment.
Interesting. So you were in the military as well.
Yeah, spent 10 years in the military. I was a paratrooper and boot camp
Awesome.
instructor.
Thank you for your service for your country. Even though
Thank you.
you're Canadian and I'm American,
Yeah.
we're but thank you very much for your service. So, I guess it's funny because I am in also a theater kid in high school. I was in theater as well too, and it's kind of interesting to think about how we sort of take those abilities or things that we learn from the theater process and sort of like how they make their way in our life, especially when it comes into sales and just being overall just like relating to people, I guess, because we all know what it's like to be on the spot and then I guess transferring that being on the spot on the stage and being on that spot, meeting people and trying to provide a service with them. Did you feel like how did you feel as though your theater background sort of played a part in you doing well on the sales side or private equity side?
It was 100% was my competitive advantage. At the beginning, I didn't realize it because it was something that just came naturally to me. In fact, when I went and I started working in the brokerage firm. So I like every big bank here in Canada, there's five big banks, and every bank has a brokerage firm or owns a brokerage firm. So I used to work for Bank of Montreal, Nesbitt Burns, so it was the brokerage firm. And when I was there, my branch manager is the one that pointed it out. So I would go and see prospects and I would chat them up, and it's a lot of soft skills. My branch manager was watching me and he would say, like, how long have you known those people? I said, I just met them. And he's like, well, it sounded like you went to high school with them. Like, how do you build rapport so quickly? And then he really dug deep into my resume and he's like, oh, I see the difference. It's like there's something different about you, based on everybody else in your cohort, and I can tell the difference. And the difference is that you've been to theater school versus everybody else that has a Bachelor of Commerce, right? And that's your difference. Is because you very, very high level in emotional intelligence and the ability and soft skills, and that's how you're able to make those connections.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how you have these people that are coming straight out of school. They understand how the numbers work and how economics works on a macro scale, but it's really when it comes down to it, it's really those soft skills when you're building relationships with potential clients and building that rapport, which a lot of I feel as though like those soft skills should be more so taught as well as the hard skills with the numbers and the macroeconomics. So it just seems like you very much find it's a rarity to find someone who understands both. You know what I mean? Especially coming from those
Yeah,
traditional schools.
absolutely, and it's kind of difficult to bring the two together because we're talking about right brain and left brain thinking. And if I were to take a look at it, as long as people are very disciplined, and if you to be a really good artist, you have to be disciplined to learn your craft. And but if you default to right brain creative thinking and you have the discipline to learn the left brain, I think it's an easier transition is because one plus one is always going to equal two. So it's all set rules when it comes to the academic. But when you get into artistic and soft skills, there are no set rules. In art, we call them principles. They're not set rules. And even those principles, you can break them. So there's certain guidelines that you have to stay within, but it's a much harder concept to grasp and learn. It takes years, if not decades. That's the challenge with soft skills.
Interesting. That's a really good point. I think it's a very interesting point that you are retired at the young age of 19, as you are now. How did you retire at, matter of fact, it's not about how did you retire, but how how did you know you were ready to fall back and take time for yourself rather than still going out there to acquire more and more wealth, and spending those crazy hours doing what you were doing before? How did what in your mind said like it's time, it's enough, it's time to retire and do something else?
Yeah, that's another great question. For me, a lot of it for a lot of people during the pandemic, it was a really great time to have a pause and do a lot of personal reflecting. And that's what I really took that time to do. And it's a bit of a misnomer when you think about retirement. Uh, People think it's like a solid line that as soon as you get to some magical number, you can retire. It's a movable number, and people don't realize that. If it really comes down to what kind of quality of life do you want? What kind of lifestyle do you want? I know there's people right now that they live in a van down by the beach, and they just work enough to pay for their expense. So once you have amassed enough wealth, where the passive income the passive income that's created from your wealth is enough to sustain your daily living, and
Mm.
that's a movable target, depends on what kind of lifestyle you want to have, then congratulations, you're retired, right? Or you can be retired. And it really took the pandemic for me to really reflect on that because my entire career in a very high paced place of finance, I've always had branch managers that were trying to push us to do more, and they would try to get you to consume. It's like, you go and everybody wants to have a 911, right? So everybody in finance, you get a nine, and once you get a 911, it's like you can't just have one 911, you need four of them, right? Because you need, especially in New York or in Toronto, you need like a four-wheel drive one, you need a Targa, you need a convertible, and then you need a turbo, right? So everybody
Mm.
has to have four. So just keep going. And then once you achieve something, the firm wants you to keep going and become a partner and keep going to the next thing. And I looked at my life and I said, I was managing a multifamily family office, and I looked at my life and I looked at people with wealth, and I recognized, I could spend the next 20 years of my life helping ultra wealthy families get even wealthier. When I look at society and I take a look at the big picture, and I recognize that society is moving further and further between the haves and the have-nots, and that
Mm.
divide is only getting further. And I recognize that the happiness in North America is also declining. And if you take a look at it, like the social economic and the social aspect of things, North America was much happier back in the 40s and 50s. And I argue the reason, or social scientists argue, is because when people came back from the Second World War, people were more close in their net worth. So there weren't people with ultra wealthy estates and people that were struggling. And you can see that across the street. And when you see that, so when you have this distribution of wealth that's more even, then society was a lot happier. So I take a look at it as like I could spend the next 20 years of my life just helping the haves get even wealthier. And what do they do with that wealth? I'm not a big fan of seeing some of the things that they were doing with their, and that was the time where things like Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein was coming out. It's like, man, maybe they don't deserve all that ultra high net worth because it has too much power. So I
Mm.
decided, you know what? I have enough where if I have a humble desires, I get rid of the desire to have four 911s and just kind of live, but like I could technically retire right now, and I can spend part of my time focusing back on exactly what you and I are doing, is helping the people that want to get into finance to help them succeed. Because I remember what it was like, and that's why I tend to give a lot of advice for free, as you've mentioned, because I recognize that there's a lot of people that want to get there, that want to get to that piece, and instead of doing it for the ultra high net worth, why don't I turn around and help the people and give a leg up to the people that want to come into finance and generate wealth not only for themselves but for their investors as well.
Well said. I like how you mentioned the 911s. I myself need two 911s. I need the GT3 and I need the air cooled, 996. But
Original
I
air cooled one, yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
right.
I
There's a
need the
whole
air cooled.
pack of them. Like you have to get the original Widowmaker, like a '98
Yeah, yeah.
turbo,
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
and then there's the and then you have to get like a GT3, yes, absolutely, and
Exactly,
then a
exactly.
four-wheel drive one, and yeah, so you'll go crazy with that. You can justify all of that.
Exactly. And it's crazy because it's like a never ending. It's wild to think that there's like this never end, like when is it going to be enough? And for me, it was kind of crazy because I wasn't even like making a substantial amount of money, but I remember when I was like still in my like DJ, I still DJ to this day, but when I was in that path of just trying to like more and more gigs, like okay, like the more gigs I take, okay, my next step is I need to start traveling around the world and then start thinking about like all the money in the world started really hitting me that like, okay, this money really starts coming in. Like, where does the happiness come in? Because it's like me having all this money, but then again, it's like I'm away from my home or my potential family for 6 months, and it's like, you start to think about like what, where your priorities truly lie at. You know what I mean? And yeah, I started reading the book. I started reading. I read Marcus Aurelius' books, Meditations, and it really put a lot of things in perspective with like what it really means to be a quote unquote man and what the type of legacy you want to leave for your family and your priorities change and at the same time also too everyone's priorities are different. I just know that there is a certain amount of money that I need for my family in order for my family to flourish. Because as you said, Edmund, I'm a firm believer too that like what we're seeing now is the shrinking of the middle class or the transfer of a strong middle class overseas to another country. Rather than here in North America, and just want to make sure that people are prepared for that. But as you said before, everyone has their own journey, everyone has their own priorities. Now, as a coach and a real estate syndicator, what is the one principle that you hope to instill in your clients about investor relations, and why is it so critical in today's market?
Absolutely. And so this is the real core of it. And this is the biggest difference that I've seen from other people that teach capital raising. One of the biggest differences that I look at, it starts with what I call the difference between transactional sales and relational sales. So I see a lot of people trying to teach like sales 101, and a lot of the concepts can be correct if you're talking about a transactional sale. So transactional sale is I'm going to sell you something and I'm never going to see you again, right? So you can sell cars like that. So you can sell a Toyota Corolla, I'll sell it to your family and I'll probably never see you again. So the focus now becomes all on the transaction, all on the product. But that's
Mm,
not what I've seen in high finance, especially if you want to get into family office. High finance and getting into ultra high net worth clients, especially family office, it's all based on the relationship. And you can sell cars this way too. So if it's the relationship, now the product changes and the focus it pivots not on the product itself, and it doesn't pivot to it really the focus becomes the individual and understanding that individual. So the skill of empathy is critical. And you can never get good enough at empathy. Empathy is the ability to read and understand what it feels like to be somebody else. What is their perspective? And I think by nature in North American society, most of the society is self-centered and not necessarily in a bad way, but that's just our default. We tend to think about our own concerns. And it takes a special type of character to have a disposition to always focus in on what does it feel like to be the other person? What are their challenges? What are their worries? And how can I focus the time and attention to them?
Hmm. Yeah. And it's just funny because out of all things, I feel like empathy is like something that's like very hard to teach, especially if someone isn't just like some people just don't have it, or some people just need we're never really taught that skill. You know what I mean? Like especially if like you're one type of person, like school doesn't teach you how to like empathize with other people. You know what I mean? It's just more so just following the rules than being emotional intelligence, as you can say. Um, so you've worked with a wider range of clients, including lottery winners and NCAA athletes. What are some of the most surprising lessons you learned from managing wealth for such diverse individuals?
I think one of the first things that I would take a look at now is not the net worth that they have, but take a look at the combination of their net worth and their money mindset, and does it match? So NCAA clients, athletes, like especially like pro athletes and lottery winners in the industry, we call them windfall clients, meaning that they had a windfall amount. The next level beyond that is people that get an inheritance, right? So
Mm,
it's not as bad as lottery. Well, lottery winners are probably the worst. Pro athletes come next, and then you have people that inherit wealth from their parents. And what happens is that their net worth changes overnight, and it's a huge windfall, and it far exceeds their money mindset. Money mindset is the biggest determining factor of whether you'll be able to keep that wealth. And I look at it like a teacup or a cup. And if you have a tiny little teacup and that's your money mindset and you dump 25 million into it, it's just going to all overflow. And in North America, the statistics are that a lottery winner is the highest percentage of millionaires that will go bankrupt in 3 years. Second highest will be pro athletes, and then the third will be, people that get an inheritance. And the reason why that's less is because sometimes it comes with professionals, and they
mm,
might learn something from their parents. So it's very frustrating, it's very challenging to deal with people that like a lottery winner because they can't tell the difference between a good deal and a bad deal. And it's so public that everybody comes after them. And there's just so many scammers, and it doesn't take very much to scam somebody that just won a huge lottery.
interesting. What are your favorite type of clients to deal with or to work with?
I think my favorite clients, it takes a while to get in there, but my favorite clients are multi-generational families. So families that are a lot of families that have like a family operation or family business, and they have 2 to 3 generations of wealth. Those are great clients to have. And then to be able to get enough goodwill where you manage all three levels. I almost got to three. Like I was in the industry for 2 decades. I almost got to third generation wealth, right? So I started getting into third generation. I opened some small accounts, but priority was that somebody's grandfather, and then the parents, and then getting into the grandkids.
Oh, wow. That's great. What are some of the lessons you learned from dealing with multi-generational wealth families like that?
It's not as great as everybody thinks it is. All right. So everybody thinks there's this magical unicorn called family office, and you can hit it like a money pinata. It takes a lot of time and effort, and it turns into psychology. And well, I kind of equate it to imagine going, if you've ever had this experience, imagine going to a very large family's Thanksgiving dinner, and there's just so much at play. There's so much, like, there's traditions that they have that you don't understand. There's dysfunction that you don't understand. And when and you're an outsider, and then you get there, and it just feels like you're an outsider, and there's all these inside jokes that you don't understand. And one brother
Mm,
will say something and the sister will fly off the handle. It's all this type of stuff. Now you add in 10 to 50 million. Usually money doesn't make family dysfunction better. It usually makes it worse. So that's what it feels like, right? And that's why people said, it's like, Ed, you got so much experience in family office. Why would you want to stop? It's like, because I don't like going to other people's, like, I did it, but I don't want to keep going to other families' Thanksgiving dinners and that whole awkwardness that you get to, and you have to be, in order to be a really good money manager, you have to be a peacemaker. and understand
Mm.
all points of view and then be able to be that. So it's a lot of family psychology. A lot of it you're going to come across as like couples therapy. You almost have to become a therapist. And it was getting to the point where I was doing that. I did a lot of psychological study to be able to be a peacemaker and help parties come together and help fix that family's dysfunction. That's the difference between a really good family office manager versus one that is just a money manager.
Interesting. I never thought of it like that, especially when you have so many different personalities, playing part in this. And then here you are, you after like you absolutely said, you were the outsider. And yeah, that's a very good analogy going to like a family dinner, like not knowing anyone. And then yeah, all these jokes. So yeah, I guess the psychology does play a huge part. Um, so where did the public speaking, where did that come? Is that sparked from the theater, and then you just taking your experiences and taking it to a stage in front of people and just sharing your experience? Tell us a little bit more about your speaking engagements.
Yeah, for what I do, I basically one of the things that I teach my coaching clients is I don't try to teach people how to be me. And one of the things I'm a big advocate is Myers-Briggs type indicator, so MBTI. So in Myers-Briggs type indicators, there's 16 different personality types, and one of the things that we do is a SWOT analysis on your personality type. So where are your strengths and where are your weaknesses, and how do we leverage your strengths? So I'm ENFJ, so I'm a raving extrovert. And one of the things that comes very easily to me is public speaking. I've been doing that ever since school. So whenever I was in university and there was a like part of the mark had to do with a presentation, I would just like knock it out of the park. It's just because it's my natural default. I'm actually more comfortable public speaking than I am. And I recognize when I do a SWOT analysis, public speaking in North American society is more of a fear for people than death. That's how hard
Mhm.
it is for other people. And I recognize it's second nature to me, and I really enjoy doing it. I really love doing it. It doesn't take me very much prep time. So I recognize this is a great way to leverage and a great way to get in front of people. And it's a great way to prospect for coaching clients. And then, and I also enjoy talking to people and helping them succeed, especially when it comes to finance and getting into finance, because I remember what it was like to be at the beginning. And I remember to what it felt like to have my nose pressed up against the window in this magical world of finance.
Interesting, very interesting. Can you tell us about your first? Well, I guess yeah. You said you were just recently at a conference and you had your speaking engagement. It was that the your first speaking engagement on that type of stage. Like you sort of like set the stage. How do you sort of? Well, I guess it comes natural to you, but what is well better question. What is your process to sort of bring someone who's not extroverted like yourself and prep them for that type of stage and setting where they're talking to, a multitude of people?
Yeah, public speaking, when I break it down, is not really all that hard for me. So I spent like since 2002, I've been in sales meetings every day. I'm presenting to high net worth people. And one of the skill sets that you learn, it's kind of like inhaling and exhaling at the same time. So one of the things that I did back in theater, but when I was back in high school, is I would do a lot of improv. And improv
Mm,
is an incredible skill to gain because what you're doing is that you're making up your script in your mind live. At the same time, you've got to read other people in the on stage to watch their reaction so that you can react. And you've also got to watch the audience to see their reaction. So if they laugh at certain things, then you got to move in that direction, right? Or if a joke falls flat, you've got to move in a different direction. So it's reading and talking and coming up with things at the exact same time. I did that for 6 years in front of paid audiences. This is
mm,
this is actually when I was in university as well. And I draw on a lot of that skill. So I combine that with making presentations in finance, day in, day out, 5, 6 days a week for, 10, 20 years, and it becomes natural. So really public speaking to me is like a sales presentation that I do where I'm reading the audience. And instead of having one person, I have like 20 people or 100 people all react, and I'm watching all their reactions.
interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. I sort of have a sort of I have go left questions, so questions that I think about today, and I just want to bring to you. And like I said, I love talking to you, Evan. So like it's going to be interesting to hear your answer to these questions or thing. So I was thinking about today, like where do you feel as though society is heading as far as our attention span and how I guess how can I say this? With the social media, and I guess it's such a great tool for you to learn, but also a tool that takes up so much attention of. so much time and attention from us. How do you feel like we are as a society are going to be better equipped to sort of like make this balance as far as like being stuck in this like virtual area and as far as like being interacting with the real life? Because what we have now is they were talking about how so there there's this whole thing with TikTok, and TikTok needs to sell to an American company before January, whatever, or it might be banned in America. So what they found out, and this was on NPR, they requested these documents from TikTok, whatever, like that, these legal documents, and someone messed up the legal documents and forgot to black out the stuff that like they were supposed to black out. So they forgot to black out how they found out that interactions with with social media had like deleterious effects to like the mind and body, especially like within kids, and how they were trying to like set up like something where they're trying to make it harder for kids to sign up for TikTok that were underage. And like the CEO was like, we kind of really don't care, because a lot of people don't realize that like out of all the algorithms, TikTok has the best algorithm, meaning it's like the most addictive out of all the social media platforms, because the way it just keeps you on there. And I'm just trying to figure like, how do you feel as though we combat this as a society, and where do you feel like society is heading as a whole? I know it's a loaded question, but you're a loaded
Oh, it
individual,
is.
and I know you're going to kill it.
Yeah, and I alluded to that I did a lot of psychological study, and that's when you get to very high level sales and capital raising, it turns into psychology. So one of the things that you were talking about, you made the distinction of addictive. And when you say the word addictive, really what we're talking about is the release of dopamine. So
Mm,
dopamine is a human hormone, and that's exactly what social media does. It gives you a dopamine hit, an immediate release of dopamine, and if you don't get it, you scroll very quickly to try to get more dopamine. So it's a dopamine hit over dopamine hit over dopamine hit. It's like cocaine, right? So that's why people keep getting it faster and faster and require more and more and more. And that's where society can get hooked and it goes into the snowball. When I'm talking about getting those people's attention, you do have to go and get on that wavelength just to sort of get in front of them. But really, what you do is you transition that over into serotonin. Serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins are the other three positive hormones, also known by the acronym of DOSE. So when we get to oxytocin, oxytocin is the friendship drug. And oxytocin is equally as addictive or sticky, but what it does is it's a slower pace. So
mm,
oxytocin is known as the friendship drug. So when I talk about empathy and soft skills and making human connection and emotional connection, I'm talking about the release of oxytocin or connecting to the release of oxytocin, and it slows the pace down. There's a great phenomenon in North America in fitness called the CrossFit, right? It's very popular. It's been around for decades, and it really changed the model. And if you analyze what happened there, you take a look at fitness and you take a look at gyms. Gyms are packed in January and February. When you get to about March, by the time you get to October, it's empty, right?
mm,
And is there a way that we can fix that? And the way that CrossFit fixes it is because of oxytocin. It's done as a group. They have set workouts every single day that everybody in North America does. And then everybody posts their numbers and people cheer them on. And you go there because there's
mm,
peers, because you have friends. And when you have friends, you create a tribe. And you have a tribe, people are relying on you. And that is really what they're doing is creating an environment for oxytocin to make it sticky to get you to come back versus nobody's there in October. So it's utilizing a lot of that when it comes to really good investor relations. Is do your clients feel like part of your tribe? And if they feel like part of your tribe, people don't attack people of their own tribe. And that's how it's like the next level beyond trust. So if you've got an investment deal that's gotten sideways, you get a lot more forgiveness and concessions versus somebody you haven't taken the time to build that relationship. They don't feel part of your tribe. They don't know your branding or they don't care about you. And that's how you increase that potential liability of people suing you if projects go sideways. You haven't done the groundwork to create that really solid investor relations. You haven't done that empathy. And I would argue what I tell people is empathy done correctly and exercised in North America is interpreted as kindness, is to focus more on you versus me. And if you execute it right, that's how people will interpret it. And if you do that and you multiply that over years of interacting with that client, that's how you get to second and third generation wealth.
interesting. Very, very interesting. I guess, yeah, there's a very good That's a very good point, Edmund. How do you feel like you yourself as a Canadian? How do you feel as though Canadian culture and United States culture is different from each other? Do you find and I say this because a lot of networking events, and this is kind of random, but like a lot of networking events that we both attend, there's a, there's a heavy Canadian presence. I didn't see it coming, and the crazy thing I realized is like it was very like Canadians have an accent, but then they don't have an accent. So it's very hard to distinguish like where you guys are from. So I knew so that I was like, oh my, I couldn't believe all these people are from Canada. What do you feel as though like is there any like difference in culture? Do you feel as though when you're talking with someone from in Canada or versus someone in the United States, or is there some things that you guys look at us and be like, okay, you guys are crazy for that? Like I just don't get it.
I think it's easier for Canadians to succeed in the US versus the other way around. And and in finance. And the reason why I say that is because so much of Canadian culture is influenced by the US by the US's popular culture. So
Mhm.
we and you guys are just broadcasting so much that we absorb it and we understand it and we know it. So we just know like Canadians know so much more about American culture than Americans growing up understanding Canadian culture. And I think that's a big reason why we've got a lot of Canadian artists that people don't even realize they're Canadian, right? Like one of the greatest love stories in America is The Notebook. And it's like, oh, what a great all-American couple. Both of them are Canadians.
Mm.
Right. So it's easy for
Yeah.
us to act like Americans because we know it so well. We grew up with it. We watch American shows. I've been watching American shows since I was a kid. Right. One of my first shows that I used to watch was California Highway Patrol, right back in the 70s. And then you just continue on like that, right? And I just watched like what I watched Knight Rider, I watched Dukes of
Cool.
Hazzard. I know all about Georgia ever since I was a little kid. I've been watching that stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess if we're neighbors, like why not? It's just for me, it's just very interesting how like like you perceive someone from Canada as like having as this sort of like accent, and it's like, one thing that always gets me too is like it's very diverse over there. You guys are very diverse, and you guys are mixing and stuff like that, and that's something to be definitely to be noticed. I guess I have to put you on the spot towards the end of our interview. Do you have any questions for me? I know you have good hardball questions, so I want you to give me a hard question, Edmund.
What do you mean by like a hard question? Like most of the time, like I to the point now, like I'm almost like my peers that started in finance were like director of sales now. That's the level that we're at. That's why I can play some hardball. It depends on like I can modulate it. Like so when you say like hardball, what kind of questions are you expecting me to ask you?
It's kind of crazy because I was like, dang, like, it's funny because I feel like anytime we're in like breakout rooms, we have like something always comes up and it brings on like a great conversation. And I'm like, damn, this needs to happen right now. And I'm like, damn, it's not happening. Because something usually someone says something, you're like, oh, that reminds me of this movie. And then we start going into this whole thing about how the movie is like a metaphor for life and everything like that. I'm just like, so it's kind of crazy, but I don't know. Yeah. Like I said, Edmund, like you're just a person I just enjoy talking to as a whole. You know what I mean? It's very rare that you meet people that you feel as though on the same wavelength as you and are able to just have conversations about pop culture and stuff like that and find deeper meanings within those type of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. So I can give you a hardball question, and these are questions that I ask a lot of people that I coach, right? So one of the things that one of my mentors taught me very early on when I was starting out in the industry is to say that, your prospect, and when you're talking about real estate and you're talking about syndications, they could get that from pretty much anybody in America. So once you understand that, you've got to recognize that if they can buy it from anywhere, it's like a commodity. The only thing that they can't sell or other people can't sell is you. So if
Absolutely.
I had 100 or $500,000 to invest, why should I pick you? Why should I do it through you versus anybody else that's out there? What is your differential? And what do you have that I can't get somewhere else?
Great question, Edmund. You have a lifelong relationship with me. That's what you get with me. Because I know that $500 you $500,000 you invest in me is only going to be the beginning. And the one thing you can always get with me is you will always get transparency and integrity because that's just the type of person I am. I'm the person you can call 3 o'clock in the morning with some sort of that's how far my dedication goes. And depending on the type of relationship I have with said person or that person is I want it to be very easy for you to call me and have a conversation with me. If you have to dread calling me up on the phone because you don't feel like you don't even like hearing my voice, that's problematic. You need to go with someone else. Because the person you want to call and spend money with is the person you don't mind having a conversation with outside of money. And that's the type of person I am.
Okay. So when I say unique value proposition, what I coach people or I tell people is the way that you answer that, can people steal that and say the exact same thing? Right? So and go to a deeper level. And once again, when I say it's like don't talk about surface level things, go deeper into things that other people can't use about that's unique about you. So you and I, we've had some discussions before. You talked that you've spent a lot of time as a DJ. You still DJ as well. And I would encourage you to leverage that because you can't hide that, right? So things that I might say is go in to say like, well, why should we invest with you? And I take 500,000 and invest with you. Well, let me tell you a little bit about my background. So you can see it on my LinkedIn profile that I was a DJ for many years. In fact, I still professionally DJ. And let me tell you a little bit of what DJ is like. What DJing is like is that in order to be a good DJ, you have to get people on the dance floor. And the way that you get people on the dance floor is you got to be able to read the audience. And when you read the audience, not every audience is the same. And you got to understand, what does the demographic look like? Is it older people? Is it younger people? What do you think they're going to enjoy? And then once you understand that, you pick up a wavelength, and then people start coming on the dance floor, and that gives you feedback. And then you got to create that wavelength and continue to create that experience. So I intentionally, and in order to do that, I have to know the audience, but I also have to know the music that's out there and be able to curate that and collect it together to provide it for my audience to get people on the dance floor to get the reaction out of them. So I am their advisor, so to speak, and understanding what popular culture is there, understanding what music that you like, and to be able to deliver it in a stream or in a way that's going to be enjoyable for you. But at the same time, I also know new trends as well. So what I try to do is influence and maybe mix in and remix certain things where it's a familiar tune from the 1990s, but I put a new spin on it and I remix it just to give you something fresh and new. Finance is no different. I understand the markets. It's my responsibility to understand my clients, to know what they're looking for, to know what their favorites are, what are their greatest hits, what could they like to invest in, but at the same time, gently ease them into new trends and developments and changes. So I can give them the greatest hits as well, but at the same time, there's other products that are there, there's other sort of remixes, there's innovations and changes that we have in the industry that I can present to you as well for your benefit. And if I don't do it right, my dance floor is empty. And I spent my entire career filling dance floors. And when I switch into finance, I'm using the exact same skill. So my focus is not only on you, but also what you like and what are the best tunes that are out there, but also what are the new trends that I can provide and mix it and blend it together.
That was masterful, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
That is
The only other people that could steal that is a DJ getting into real estate syndications, which is a far smaller number than the people that could steal what you just said.
absolutely. You're absolutely right about that. Yeah, that was good, Edmund. Was very good. I remember you had said it to me before, but the fact that you're able to like expound on it at such great skill and at such a high level is great. What can we expect from you in the next 5 years? You're gracing these stage public speaking. Where do you do you want to be on the stage with Tony Robbins? Where do you hope to take this?
I think intentionally, I want to keep it low key. I don't want to be on a big stage. And some of the things that I've recognized, I've looked at, and like one of the things that I was taught is take a look at the road that you're headed down and the direction that other people have headed. And I've seen a lot of public speakers like a Tony Robbins, all this kind of stuff. And I look at the challenges and the life that they have now, and it's not something that I'm looking for. One of the things that really want to do is I want to move the needle on, like, I want to almost be like a silent success story for other people. I want to put other people first. And that's what we learned in theater. So in theater, I was a guy that was behind the scenes and we call it technical production. And our responsibility is to be not seen. We wear black and we try to hide. And our goal is to put the spotlight on somebody else. And I take that philosophy back to me when I'm a coach, is to be able to put the spotlight on my clients and help them succeed. But I know and they know that the reason why you're succeeding is because I'm holding you up and I gave you some pointers and I helped you there. But I hope you succeed, not me. It's not about focusing on me because I've already done it. And I don't want that fame because I recognize there's a lot of downsides that come with that fame. And I'd rather just go and because there's this one line that I have is that I realize now that the less I take, the more I can give. And I've seen people say that, I want to become a billionaire. So why do you want to become a billionaire? I want to step on people's necks and become a billionaire so that I can become a philanthropist. And I was like, why don't you just take less now Don't become a billionaire because you have to build these big gates and you have to have security forces. Why don't you just become a nobody, be happy with a couple of million, and then spend your extra time giving back now? Why don't you just do that?
Yeah, that
Right. Or
does
to
make a
your
lot
point, what you said is like, I want to be a great international DJ at the cost of my family. So I'm going to be divorced and have kids. And then once I make all my wealth, I'm going to come back and try to repair my marriage or have a second
of
family and do it right. Why don't you just do it right the first time?
the second family play.
Yeah,
Do it
well, I'll have
right
a
the
second
second.
family, but I'll be a multimillionaire. It's like, is it really worth it that you have a multi-million? And now when you realize, and I've seen this with clients, they're multimillionaires and they're single, but they're suspicious of all the people that are coming and they try to,
Yeah,
do they really like me for me or my wealth? It's like,
absolutely.
and then they realize, you know what, my first spouse or my first partner was actually really good. If I had actually only spent more time, and I'm estranged from my kids, they hate my guts, they never saw me. Well, why don't you take less, be happy with what you have, and spend more time with your family? In psychology, there's a concept because I was in the military, as I mentioned, and a lot of my students or a lot of people that I taught went over to Afghanistan. They came back, and some of them had mental injuries. Some of them had PTSD, and they reached out and they're because I used to be their medic. And they asked me a couple of questions about mental health, and I did a deep dive and a deep study into it, which also helped me in capital raising. But I recognize that one of the things they talk about mental resiliency, and they say that in the social dynamic, people that tend to be, they like social scientists have discovered that people that are more mentally resilient have a larger social network of people that are supporting them. And I started to see the difference from my seat in finance. The higher the net worth the people, the more lonely they tend to be because they become
Mm,
more isolated. And the reason why is that if you're a multimillionaire and all your friends from high school are not, two things will happen. Either one is the social interaction becomes very awkward because you show up in one of your 911s and they know you have four of them and they've got a Corolla that's all rusted out and it becomes very awkward. So you can't hang out with them, right? Or society people tend not to hang out with them. Or
mm,
if they do, they start asking them for help and for money and you become a resource for them and they're always being pitched either an
mm,
investment deal or pitch for, and once again, it becomes awkward again. So you have to disassociate yourself from people. So you can only associate people with the same social economic class, and the higher net worth you get, the fewer people you'll be able to match in that social economic class. If you take a look at millionaires in America, that's only the top like 11 to 9% of American society. So it starts to become incredibly lonely. And that's where you start to see a lot of mental breakdown because you don't have a social network. You don't have that mental resiliency. So I recognize that I take a different approach to what wealth really is in North America. Wealth is not what's in your bank account. For me, it's more about the social connections that you have. Hence, there's another reason why I'm giving away a lot of advice for free, is because I want to build a bigger tribe. I want to go and put goodwill. I want to help other people out to recognize to build that social network and have people be grateful for things I provide for them. So there's all these mix of things and motivations for why I do what I do.
mm. Ladies and gentlemen, Edmund Chien. Please let everyone know how they can reach out to you, your social media handles, all that stuff.
Yeah, the best way to reach out to me is through LinkedIn. So my last name is a unique spelling. It's Chien. Interestingly enough, if you didn't know, my last name is literally money. So the Chinese character for money is my last name. It's a vocational last name. So all my ancestors were financial professionals. So it's Edmund Chen. There's not too many of us. I think I'm maybe the only one. And you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and then mention that you heard this show with Harrison. And I'll be happy to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Evan, for coming on. I'm sure we'll be having you back at some point in time because I know you're growing and I'm growing, and it's going to be a hell of a journey, my friend.
Yeah,
Thanks again.
it's great to watch you, and I wish you the best. And that's one of the reasons I want to be here and support you.
Awesome. Thanks, Evan.
My pleasure.